Hey everybody, welcome to David and Jerry's Real Estate Cafe. I'm David Grossman. It's great to have you all with us tonight. It is May the 19th, and my goodness, it's summer is upon us finally after a very long spring and very enjoyable. So it's great to see all of you with us tonight. We have a great show lined up. I'll tell you what the plan is. First of all, my partner and good friend Jerry Hogenhout is going to talk to us today about what's doing a little tax update, and also he's going to talk about some investment things he's working on. The theme tonight, people, is apartment building investing, investing in apartment buildings. So Jerry's got a couple things on the go. Then we're going to speak with Ian. Ian Walterhouse is here with us, a real estate agent from Century 21. He's going to give us a bit of a market update. We have Clovis Grant. He's here from 360 Kids. Clovis is a good friend of Ian's, and they do amazing work at 360 Kids. We're going to learn more about what they do for the community, specifically in York Region, how they help people, how they help kids. Then we have with us KenLee from Avenue Living. Welcome, Ken. Ken and I have talked on the phone a number of times, and it's good to see him here. He also has a tie, so he's running neck and neck with Ian Walterhouse. Good to have you with us, Ken.
Thank
Ken
you.
is gonna talk about Avenue Living, which is an issuer. It's a residential apartment REIT, and they have apartments in the prairies, which is a little different, but there's some good reasons to be thinking about investing apartment buildings in apartment buildings in the prairies. So we're going to talk about that. We also have Howard Landau, a trustee, insolvency trustee. He will be with us soon. He's taking his son for a COVID shot, but he'll be back to give us an update. What's happening in the world of judgments and court proceedings against people who aren't able to keep up, sadly, with things and what is happening in that area. Then we also have Navtaj Chanjoki from Flipping for Profit. We're going to be getting an update from Navtaj on what's new in the market as far as flipping goes, and you'll learn more about Navtaj if you don't already know him. He's a good friend of Jerry and ours. He does a regular ongoing training and such, and he invites Jerry and I often to be part of that. So we wanted to have him on our broadcast tonight. So let's start off with Jerry. Jerry, tell us first of all what is new in the world of tax, and what are some of these investment opportunities that you're working on? I know you got a number of things on the go.
Yeah, thank you, David. Welcome, everyone. So, in the world of tax, I mean, we're just in the middle of the craziest tax season ever because of all this government funding that they filtered through the tax system, which has made our jobs as CPAs, public accountants, quite challenging. But anyway, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. But just a reminder to all you self-employed people that your filing deadline is June 15th, so it's coming up. For those of you with corporations, December year-end corporations, your filing deadline is June 30th. So just a little reminder about that. As far as the investments, good topic tonight, David, multi-unit. We have a bunch of things on the go here at Canadian Investment Service. Interesting that we have KenLee from out west. We've actually firmed up our 29-unit apartment building in Brooks, Alberta. So it's fully subscribed, so there's no opportunities there. But if anyone's interested in the prairies, we're going to be interested to hear what Ken has to say. We have a couple of local opportunities. We're firming up a 14-unit apartment building in Midland. That one's coming along nice. We have some opportunities there for investors. I'll be setting that up as a joint venture arrangement with investors. And also in the neighboring community in Penetang, there's an interesting development. So I'm working with a developer. They're going to create 56 units, adult, senior community, and We got an interesting investor angle that I've created with it. Investors can put a small deposit, $6,000 down. They control the contract, so they enter into a purchase agreement, and they're encouraged to transfer that, to sell it, and they have 1 year to do that. So it's actually a good way to tie up a purchase price, which will be between $350 and $399, depending on the model. You put your $6,000 down, you enter into a purchase agreement. It has an assignment clause. We'll be actively assigning that. It's not going to be owner occupied. We're doing that to avoid carry-on, so it's not a new build. So we basically close. We'll probably close next May, put in a tenant, a lease-to-own tenant, for a year. So anyway, it's an interesting investor angle on it for those people that have any interest. Midland and Penetang, beautiful area. The next Collingwood, they call it. So it's certainly a growing area. A good place to either get involved in an apartment building or these developments that we're putting together. So that's interesting. Got
Jerry,
an
tell
interesting meeting
us
with
about the tiny homes. Is that what you were going to say next? I know
tiny
that's
homes. Yeah, so I'm meeting with somebody's reached out to me once again to put an investor angle to. So they're building a tiny home community, and we've all heard of these things. We haven't seen a whole lot of, it's popular, it's coming. There's lots of interest in it. It's the municipalities that are really boggling it down as far as giving the proper approvals. So I just so happened to be meeting with somebody on Saturday that is creating a tiny home community. And they've actually been on Dragon's Den, and they have dragons investing in this. So it's kind of a bigger thing. And they're actually going to a community where my best friend is the CAO, who is a strong advocate for tiny home communities. So him and I chat daily, and he's really excited to really lay a framework for these municipalities to allow these type of communities and create a structure where it's going to be commonplace. So this is outside of Brockville that it's going to be happening. So that's going to be interesting. We're going to follow it through. I'm meeting with the principal on Saturday, and we're going to put a lot of different ideas on the paper, but it's kind of interesting being on the inside with the CAO, who's my best friend, who is going to be very active to try to create a municipal structure that allows these type of communities. And I think it's going to be very commonplace in a lot of these communities. It's affordable housing at its best. I mean, these are anywhere from 200 to 600 square foot homes, community settings. It's what we need to deal with affordable housing. So it's coming. It just needs the blessing of the municipality. I actually bought a tiny home. I have a tiny home in the backyard of one of my rental properties. So I'm active in that community. So I'm really looking forward to this upcoming, investment opportunity.
Are you aware of any in Kitchener?
Sorry?
Are you aware of an initiative in Kitchener that's working on tiny homes?
I understand. I'm not exactly one in Kitchener. I know there's a bunch of them. They're starting to get traction. I know we had a client. In fact, he was on our show here, David. If you recall, they had a trailer park.
Randy, yeah.
Yeah, but it was somebody else that owned a trailer park, and what they did is they converted. So what happens when these municipalities allow a trailer park? They put a bylaw in place, which basically says, yes, you can run a trailer park here, and occupancy can be for up to 11 months. So they specifically stop you from being there for a year, and it's just a bylaw that prevents that. So what they did in Cambridge, where this person owned the trailer park, the owner convinced the municipality simply to delete that bylaw. Just delete the fact that you can only do this 11 months. So what ended up happening is he has a trailer park. You're not supposed to live there full time, but you have access to your trailer 12 months of the year. So that kind of stick-handled around the rule. It didn't really give the blessing everybody's looking for, but it really prevent people from basically shacking up in their trailers for 12 months of the year. So I'm not aware of the Kitchener one, but I am aware there's other municipalities that are really jumping on board. There seems to be, there doesn't seem to be a common structure yet. So I'm really looking forward to working with my good friend, the CAO, to really put something in place, that can be an example for many municipalities, because I'm really surprised it hasn't gained traction. And I think they're really just trying to debate what is a tiny home, what is permanent living. There's still many issues, which is a little surprising, because this has been out there for a while, and there's a great demand for it. It's great rental income. Again, I put a tiny home in the backyard. I have a big backyard in a rental property. I put a tiny home back there, and what it does to the cap rate is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Even if I make $1,000 a month, there's no cost to it. 12,000 divided by a 5% cap rate adds $250,000 to the value of my building. I mean, it's just incredible. I'm not saying I get the 250, but it certainly puts me in a position to say, hey, my building is worth more. So it's a great thing. So I really look forward to seeing where this
Yes,
goes.
Jerry, you're right. I remember we had somebody on.
I forget who he was.
Jonathan or something. I mean, he
Jonathan,
he had a pond.
Jonathan, yeah. So he owned the park, and I drove there and I went to see it because I was so interested. Like, how did you do this? How do you have people living there year round? And he showed me around. He explained what he did. I'm like, wow, okay. So once again, he didn't get permission to do what he's doing, but he basically, they can't prevent him from what he's doing. So there's a little uncertainty there, but so we're really looking for permission. We're looking for the proper approval to say, yes, that's a tiny home community. You can live there 12 months of the year and everything is good. So, I mean, you can even have a tiny home. I had another client who halfway up to North Bay, if you turn west, you get into this, what they call unstructured municipalities or something. So they're building a big tiny home community there, completely off grid, so that's where these municipalities have an issue. It's like, well, what are you doing?
Okay. All right. Well, sounds good, Jerry. Be sure to keep us up to date. You're a little frozen there, so you'll keep us up to date. Let's go over to Ian. Ian Walterhouse from Century 21. How are you doing tonight, Ian?
I'm doing awesome, brother. Thanks for asking. Love
All
being
right.
part of the show. I appreciate you having me out.
Absolutely. Everybody's growing their beards now. I don't know. I feel like missing out. I'm not sure. Anyway,
My new motorbike's coming in. I got to look the part.
You're looking very distinguished. Ian Walterhouse, talk to us, please, about the what's the latest average solds, days on market. What's the latest happening out there in the market?
Yeah, sure. I'll give you the numbers here real quickly, just so people can have an understanding of what's going on. So this is the numbers from the Toronto Real Estate Board as of April. So we're into May, so we have the April numbers in now. So I'll share that with you. The big increase was the actual number of sales that happened. So there was an increase of 362% actually. So this time last year, there was about 2,957 homes that were sold. Now, we were just getting into the height of COVID, so things were really slowed down. April 2021, back up, we're at 13,663 total sales, so it increased quite a bit. Days on market, as we know, it still is a seller's market. Now, it's not moving nearly as quickly as the first quarter. The first quarter was what we call the perfect storm. Really low interest rates, really low inventory, and we actually had a really nice mild winter, so we had people out there looking for homes. So the market's not moving as fast as it was in the first quarter. As far as days on market, right now we're at 2 weeks, so you list your home, sold in 2 weeks. Back in the first quarter, literally 6 days, I had a couple that were sold within hours, but it's slowing down a little bit. Average price, big increase there. So average price in the GTA this time last year was about 820,000, currently sitting at 1.1 million. So big big jump in there. A lot of people have been asking me, is it a bubble? Is it going to crash? Is it slowing down? And what I tell them is, you know what, right now it's normalizing. So I'll just give you an example. If I take the first week from March, so let's go March 1st to 9th, we had 4,430 sales. Into April 1st to 9th, 4,000 sales. So we see a little bit of a drop there. And then the first week in May, May 1st to the 9th, 3,200 sales. So slowing down, I would say normalizing is what's happening there. Definitely still in a seller's market. Looks like we're going to be in a seller's market for the rest of the year. And we're probably looking at a record number of sales throughout this year as well. So 2 years ago, there was 88,000 sales. Last year, 94,000. We're tracking right now for about 100 to 105,000 sales. So yeah, seller's market throughout. Inventory, right now we're at about 12,500, and we don't see that going over much over 17,000 for the rest of the year. When we get to about 20,000 active listings on the market, then it starts to do the swing to the buyer's market, but definitely looking at a seller's market for the remainder of the year.
That's awesome, Ian. Thank you very much for that update.
Yeah, more than welcome.
Nice job. We appreciate that. So,
not a problem. I was just going to mention.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to mention normalizing. I like that things are.
Yeah, normalizing. We're getting into numbers that we usually see throughout the year. Right. So none of this crash stuff, none of this bubble bursting stuff.
Were you going to say something else?
Well, I was just going to mention anybody that's here is watching, if they do want to reach out, it's Ian Walterhouse from the Walterhouse Realty Group. Your home sold guaranteed, or we will buy it. And also want to make people aware that for every transaction that we do through the Walterhouse Realty Group, we do donate a portion of our income to a great organization by the name of 360 Kids, where we help youth get back to a place of safety and security. And that's my segue for your next guest.
All right, that's excellent. I'm going to take an opportunity to just comment on the stress test, because we lost Jerry there. Jerry was going to ask me about the stress test, and unfortunately, Jerry, we lost you. But basically, starting in June, very soon, a stress test is going to come into play for conventional mortgages, meaning when you have more than 20% down. The stress test is going to get worse, is basically what I mean to say. So in the past, where you had to qualify at 4.79% or 2% higher than whatever your contracted rate was, that's going to get even worse now. So you're going to have to qualify at 5.25%. So even if you're like taking a variable rate mortgage of 1.5% or lower than that, or a 5-year fixed rate mortgage at 2%, you still have to qualify at 5.25%. So, what I tell people is basically my standard line is don't get stressed out about the stress test. Most people who are coming into the market today, if they're young people and they're not big income earners, they have some assistance, often from parents or somebody's helping them out. So with that kind of help, it's not going to really make much difference. We have solutions. We have lenders who are provincially regulated, and they don't follow the stress test. They actually qualify at the contract rate, which is quite amazing. And so it's important to talk to a mortgage broker if you're looking to purchase or refinance, somebody who's got a handle on the different options that are available out there. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Clovis Grant. Clovis and I had a good chat yesterday about 360 Kids, and Ian, thanks again for introducing us to Clovis and 360 Kids. And my understanding is the organization helps kids primarily in York region, and they do a lot of great work. So Clovis, why don't you tell us a bit about the organization and its history? You're on mute, by the way. We got to unmute you.
Yeah, no,
there you are.
I was ready, but then of course I forgot.
Okay.
No, I love the conversation. And when we talk about homelessness, obviously housing becomes a huge factor. And when I'm hearing all of these challenges. And David, I know you said don't get stressed out, but unfortunately for many of our young people, they can't help but get stressed out because in order for us to solve the the homelessness crisis, which we know exists in not just in the GTA, but really across Canada and across North America, housing is a really big issue. And so 360 Kids has been around for just over 30 years in York Region. And really it was a response from the community identifying that there are very few places that a homeless young person can actually go to in York Region. Typically people think homelessness is a big city, Toronto, Vancouver, those kinds of places problem. But unfortunately what happens is homelessness in the suburbs gets sort of buried and no one talks about it, but a lot of people struggle and suffer. And prior to our existence 30 years ago, young people were either going into adult shelters or down into Toronto. So you're automatically breaking them away from their community when it really needs a community response. So gratefully, we've got our program, and over time, we've had to continue to expand. So as I was explaining to David, now we serve about 4,000 young people every year in a whole host of different programs, going well beyond housing. Because when you think about it, and I'll explain a little bit about why young people become homeless to help you understand why we had to adjust our programming. Because our four key areas that we do our work in is, of course, housing, and there's a range of services there. But we also focus on employment to support young people getting connected to the labor market. Education, we know all of these are bedfellows, right? Education is really critical. And then obviously overall health and well-being. And so all of those things are important, because when you understand that homelessness is not just because a person's poor. I think sometimes people have a lot of myths around homelessness, that these are kids who are poor, from poor backgrounds. Not true. These are kids who just don't want to obey rules at home. Not true. These are kids who live on the street by choice. Think about February in the Toronto area, minus 20. No, no young person wants to live on the street. So family breakdown, that's really the big issue. Sometimes it's families don't understand what young people are going through, the mental health challenges that sometimes gets masked with addictions issues. Sometimes, and a lot of times what we see is actually the problem is with the parents. Breakdown in marriages that where kids are become collateral damage. You've got situations where families have mental health challenges and they can't actually take care of the kids. You can get really even graphic to situations where families have gotten their kids into human trafficking to support a habit. So when you put all of that together, you can start to understand that growing up, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old young girl whose family has allowed her to become involved in human trafficking, what does that do to that young person? It is no wonder why there's a strong correlation between human trafficking and homelessness. But once you're on the street, your mental health deteriorates. And so if you didn't have a mental health challenge before, there is a very strong likelihood that you're going to have one. And this is what happens when you're on the street. So our programs, when that young person comes to us, we have to think about all of those dynamics. And that's why we provide, we call it wraparound supports for those young people, and give them the housing, the education. And so it's really, I think, an important thing to talk about, especially in places like York Region, where people think of affluence, but they don't think about homelessness. And we're here to say that rough estimates are that there are about 300 young people who are homeless in York Region. We also know that homelessness looks very different in the suburbs, and that you don't see them hanging out by subway grates because, well, there aren't any. Well, okay, maybe not for too long, but that's not what it looks like in places like York Region. And so there could be a kid going to school every day, but they're living on friends' couches. They're going, some have been living in abandoned vehicles, abandoned houses, in parks. But that's just, they just learn to survive, and they wouldn't even consider themselves homeless. And this is really the interesting thing. Young people don't often think of themselves as homeless. It's just a period in time. And then I'll just lastly say why we have to address homelessness as young people separate and apart from adult homelessness is because when you look at the stats, 50% of those adults who become homeless actually started their homeless journey before they're 24. And when you look at those who are youth who are homeless, about 40% started before they're 16. So it's really critical for us to think about our young people, to look at ways to prevent homelessness. And then we have to think about, and this is, in this circle here, you're all talking about housing. And so as an organization, we have to get very creative around how we do housing. So those are a few things. I don't know if you want me to get into some of our housing.
I would like to hear more. And also, what can people do to help? Like how, money, help, time, volunteer, housing.
Yeah, you know what? I run a not-for-profit organization. So if I don't talk about money, far be it from me to not give up that opportunity. But you saw our website there. So right now, because of COVID, we don't really do a lot in terms of volunteering. But in the past, we really rely on volunteers to do drives like clothing drives, food drives. All of those things become really important to help offset some costs. We're limiting that now, but what people have done in the past, over the past year, is to actually, there you go. If you go on our website, you'll see that Gifts That Matter, and we have a variety of different ways that people can give. And people, we also expect to be opened up soon, so companies can, provide services like cook a meal or do corporate drives for some products for our young people. So those opportunities do exist. We have a program called Night Stop. So we're always also looking for people who maybe they're empty nesters, if you understand the term, who've got spare bedrooms in their home, who could actually provide housing to young people so that the kids don't actually have to come into a shelter. These are sometimes young kids whose situation is maybe in a temporary way, and these are kids for whom we don't want them to go into an emergency shelter program, and so we can train volunteers in the community, if they've got spare bedrooms, to actually take a youth in for short or even longer period of time and act as very positive mentors to them. So that's an example of what ways that people can help. And I don't want to use the word foster, but it's the concept is similar, but we actually train the hosts and provide to be able to provide that support. The other ways that when we're talking about real estate folks, things to think about is we need housing, and we need good landlords, because sometimes one of the things that we run into is people don't want to rent to young people. These are youth who may not be able to go back home, so we need to find a solution as to a place where they can go. And so what we have a program called Transitions. And simply put, it's a way that we have devised creatively by fundraising to be able to provide rent supplements to the youth. And over a 3-year period, we help the youth learn how to to become good renters. And they pay increasing amounts of rent over the 3 years. So by the time the 3-year period comes, their rent gets close to market. And what that does is gives a young person time, which oftentimes they don't have, to be able to be stable and to transition. Number one, but number two, it teaches them the skills needed to live independently, and we work with them over that time in supporting them. And thirdly, when we rent facilities in the community, the landlord then realizes that, you know what, maybe whatever stereotypes they might have of that young person, they can dismiss it, because here's an example of somebody who's lived, paid the rent, and kept the place in good order. As one of the outcomes of the program is, then we step away, we being 360 Kids, and then that young person can actually sign the lease now and take over that unit. So that's one model of our transitions program that works for landlords in the community.
Clovis, I just wanted to jump in here real quick,
Yeah.
just so, because we've got a lot of people on here that are investors that do own rental properties. The great thing about this transitions program is that 360 is basically your tenant. They are paying full fair market value rent. So you have a guaranteed tenant for 3 years at fair market value. And if there is anything that happens to the property, 360 takes responsibility for that as well. So I just want people to understand that you could literally have a tenant guaranteed for 3 years.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. And that is correct. And where we come in is we fundraise to cover the cost of the we'll call them rent supplements, because if the unit is $1,500 a month, it's pretty steep for a young person. So they may be paying beginning, let's say $600 a month, then we are paying the $900. Then year two, they may now go up to $750. So it reduces our supplement. And then by year three, maybe they're up to closer to $1,200 or $1,000, $1,200. So it reduces our investment in the place. And again, our commitment is to raise the money. So yes, please donate.
And the people that are going to be there, they're fully vetted as far as the people that are going in. And you do have a worker that will actually come out and visit with them and make sure that the property is in good working order as well.
Look at that. Ian's he's amazing. He works.
I want to sell it to the investors.
Thank you.
No worries.
Well, Clovis, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Are you working with other social programs? So if somebody, for example, is on social assistance, is that somebody you're working with too? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you're supplementing the income that they would get through let's say a social assistance program.
Right. And the focus is that young person needs to be at a place where in a place in their lives where they're willing and able to live independently, because not everybody is.
Right.
And then we'll put the services and supports to them so that they can get to that place. Yeah. But one thing I did want to add, again, with the fact that I've got so many housing people, is we know that there are also abandoned buildings or buildings that are left unused in York Region. And sometimes we do get funding that we can actually do some renos. Instead of us having to supplement the rent, because at times that can be really expensive for us, what we can do is, in exchange for having to do the rent supplements, we have a partnership with Home Depot Foundation where we do get some funding, and we try to cobble together some others where we can do some renovations of some existing properties that are just sitting idle. And then through an extended lease period, usually we like 10 years if that house isn't being used. We providing the cost for the renovations, it appreciates the house's value, but it also provides appreciates the house value for the owner, but at the same time, it also provides housing for young people. So it's a win-win for both parties. And as long as it's not too pricey, because I've seen some places that are dilapidated and cost 700 and 500,000, like that's well beyond us. But if it's in not too bad a shape, we can rally some folks to help us donate stuff to help us with the renos, and we work together. And so we're also looking for that. And then if I can actually just throw one more thing in, because we were actually just chatting with my employment manager, and we run a program called Every Bite Matters. It's almost like a social enterprise. The young people learn about cooking skills. We actually teach them all the basics. They get all the certifications for food handlers, etc. And then they actually cook for seniors. So we have a partnership with organizations like Chat, where the youth pre-COVID, not right now, unfortunately, but pre-COVID, the youth would learn the skills, actually prepare a meal for seniors, like a lunch, or typically it's lunch. Actually, we'll go and have the meal with the seniors, and build that social connection with them. And then the other part of the program is then they would get a placement in a restaurant. And so these are kids who are learning, practicing, and doing the social connection. One of the things that we're looking for is right now we've been using our commercial kitchen at our drop-in program, but to really expand the program, we're actually looking for space where there is a commercial kitchen and not too pricey, but along the bus line. So in Richmond Hill would be preferred. So if you have connections I know right now the food industry has been hit hard through COVID, and maybe there are opportunities with vacant spaces. If anyone has those kinds of connections, I'd love to chat. So,
okay, Clovis, I don't know if you know Steffi Goodfield from York Region Open Mic. They do a lot of music events and different things. So I just wanted to mention I'd like to introduce you
okay.
later on to Steffi. So friends, don't hesitate to reach out to Clovis. His contact information is on the screen, or you can also go to the website. If you're talking and you're okay. Very good, Clovis. Thanks again, and thanks, Ian, for introducing us.
Just sorry, email clovis.grant@360kids.ca.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, excellent. So next up, I want to introduce KenLee. Ken, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All
Hey,
right.
David.
All right. So Avenue Living, the organization that Ken is with, is on the product shelf of Huxton Black. Huxton Black is the exempt market dealer that I'm registered with. As some of you may know, in addition to being a mortgage broker, I'm also a licensed dealing representative, and we love the REITs, especially the apartment REITs. And I was introduced to Ken not that long ago, and I've been learning because I haven't been in the business for very long, but I'm learning that Avenue Living, a lot of people love it, and I've enjoyed all my conversations with Ken, and there are some very good reasons to consider investing in apartment buildings in the prairies. So without further ado, Ken, I'm going to give you the floor. I'm also going to make you a co-host so that you can show your slides. For the usual button to do that is not showing for some reason, so I don't know why. Just give me a moment. I'm sure I'll figure it out. But you can start chatting if you don't mind.
Okay. So Avenue Living has been around since 2003, where we are a privately owned private equity real estate shop. We currently manage 5 mandates or 5 funds, but our core, the one I want to speak to about tonight is our core, our flagship, which is our real estate core. It focuses on multifamily in the prairies, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. And then the main reason why we're in those regions out rather than being in British Columbia or Ontario is the fact that the cap rate environments are comparably they're 2.5 to 3.5 in Ontario and BC. The markets that we're in Alberta and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, they're about 5.5 to 6 3/4. So that's pretty much the fundamental there, along with the facts that boots to the ground. Our founder is born and raised in Calgary. His father started his wealth in mini mall self-storage. So combine those two, they really know about real estate in the prairies. Now, Avenue Living is broken up into a property management firm.
By the way, Ken, I've given you control as a. You should be able to turn on your slides if you'd like to now.
Sure. Okay. Avenue Living is broken up into two sort of organizations. The first entity is a property management, Avenue Living Communities. There are about 400 employees. They take care of all of the management of the buildings and the renovations and collection and all the tenants. And Avenue Living Asset Management, which is the entity that I'm a part of, we handle all of the investments, so the capital, equity raising, the acquisition strategy, and that's probably about 100 employees or so. So one of the competitive edges of being able to buy and also manage our own assets is that we have more control over both sides. At the root of the strategy is to target undervalued B and C class income producing assets in those regions. We're at about 18 different markets in those three provinces now. We have over 10,000 units. We have over 400 buildings and over 25,000 tenants. We manage close to $2.3 billion in assets under management in our real estate portfolios, collectively firm-wide. In our core trust, we're at about 1.7 billion AUM. I would like to have the forum more of an open forum so that you can ask questions, because naturally, we are probably effectively the only private real estate owner and operator in the prairie region. So naturally, the first question is, why are you out there? What's so special about there? How are you able to sustain so please raise your hand and answer questions at any time. I'll probably, rather than sending out the slides right now, I'll probably send it to you, David, and you can just send it out to the participants later on. Now, since we've been around since 2003, we've gone through the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009. We've gone through the commodity crisis in 2014, and most recently, we've gone through the COVID pandemic, global pandemic. And with each one of those market turmoils and uncertainties and the price rallies and the bear and bullish runs, our strategy just remains strong and does what it's supposed to do, just climb up. So we have no correlation to public equity markets, public debt markets. We don't get in the way of any sort of portfolio strategies or mandates, whether you're in the privates or on the public side. We just create our 8 to 12 per annum return for net of fees for our investors. We've never missed a distribution payment. We pay a 6% distribution, and that's 100% ROC. And we also add value with a 3 to 5% appreciation on the NAV value. So collectively, we're aiming between an 8% and a 12% return net of fees per year for investors.
Ken, you mentioned ROC.
Yes.
Can you break that down? What does that mean? We're talking 8 to 12%. Or no, I think you said 6% ROC. What does that mean?
Yes, ROC. So ROC would be a return of capital. So if you give me $1 and I'm paying you 6 cents per month, I'm just simply returning the capital that you gave me. I'm returning a piece of your dollar that you gave me. So that is tax efficient. So the tax is deferred as long as your dollar depreciates over until it has a value of 0. So to depreciate our net asset value of $10.20 per unit at a 6% rate per year, it'll take 15 years plus so effectively you're deferring your taxes 15 years out.
Okay, so as compared with an interest income,
gain,
let's say.
Yes. So
yeah.
Compared to that capital gains, which is once you take the units or you take the earnings, half of that is going to go into taxes. So you can really take a fund that's earning 15% and 4% is rock. The remaining 11 is capital gains. So if you were to take that out, and this is just an analogy, but take that out, half of that goes to tax. So it's really 5.5 plus the 4 rock. You're at a 9.5, and then we're at 8 to 12. So we do about 10.5 per year across all of our unit classes. So 6 to 7 is the rock based on the unit class, but let's just say 6. Take out the 6, and then the 4, or take out the 4, which is going to be capital gains, and then half of that is 2. So you add that back, so we're at about 8. So taking a 10% fund and a 15% fund, and if you do the tax calculations, my algorithms are not really exact and precise, but it's just more of a illustration. You're going to be a lot closer together. Instead of a 10 and a 15% fund, you're at an 8 and a 9.5% fund.
So Ken, have all your distributions been rock?
Yes.
So far?
From the beginning, yes.
And have you ever, do you guys ever entertain like a condo conversion of these apartment buildings, or is that not on your radar?
I'm not a part owner or an owner, so I can't speak to our strategy, but our core strategy really is because if some of our peers kind of look at A-class buildings or the concrete glass, so yeah. we stay from that because we want the value add part of it.
Yeah.
So we'll go in and we'll take an older, undervalued, and let's just say they're quite unattractive. So yeah. We want to go in and renovate that. And we also have we're also partnered with Home Depot, where we've been Home Depot's client for the last 7 years. 6 of the last 7 years we're Home Depot's largest client in Canada, because we're buying a million square foot of tile. We're buying 500,000 square foot of carpet and whatnot. So
so how do you so you got the renovation model, so you're buying buildings that need some TLC, and you put the TLC into it and bump up the rents. How do you get the tenants out? You've got a tenant in there, they're allowed to stay there forever if they want. Maybe explain that process.
So at the time of acquisition, we do not, our strategy is not to push out any of the tenants, because naturally you probably have a natural vacancy of 10%. So
okay.
we'll use that 10%, whatever that is. It might be 12, it might be 6, yeah. But we'll use that to renovate what's vacant. Okay. And the people that live in those buildings, they enjoy living in the area or the building, because we cater to trading populations. So there's the workforce housing that are 40% of our portfolio is essential workers at any given time. So the trading population multiples are 3 times or 10 times. So neighboring cities will come and drive to that city every day to work. So that's kind of our where we focus.
And, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
$10 million question.
Yes.
Why the prairies? You talk about the cap rates, but what about rent controls?
Yes. Okay. So one of the main challenges is if I buy a unit and I get a renter in, and the renter, pay first month good, collect the rent, second month, and then say month 3 stops paying me rent. In BC and Ontario, that individual or that couple or whoever, they can continue to live there without paying rent. So month 1, no rent, month 2, and so on. So you could really that tenant could be there a year, not pay your rent, and you really have very little power. You have to go through all the right channels and do the right thing. In Alberta and Saskatchewan, if they don't pay rent the first month, we can show up with RCMP and evict that tenant. So there's the laws in the provinces that we operate in. They don't just blindly favor the tenant. We have more power as the owner.
Okay, and what about rent controls?
The risk of us.
What about
rent controls? There are.
So you can increase the rent if you want, if you think the tenants will pay.
So I'll just compare it to BC and Ontario. Rather than having to only be able to increase rent 2.5% per year, let's say, we could increase rent 3.5% or 4.5% or 10%. Now, doing so would be, unethical and or but let's run the scenario of, let's say there's such a market turmoil that all markets are going, negative 10%, negative 20%. We're at a position to be able to increase rents to more than 2.5%, to be able to take a less of an impact, or so no impact, or mitigate the risk impact to the downside of our investments.
What's going to happen when interest rates go up? How will that impact the values of your holding units and the assets?
So when I say we manage 2.2 billion AUM, we our loan to value is currently about 60%, 60.5%. So the equity stack in our capital, the equity in our capital stack is about 850 million. So of course our monthly commitment on the mortgage payments will go up, but we have been adding value to, because we really have no peer or no competitor, because we have Boardwalk, we've got Main Street, but they're public, and then they've been focusing less on the prairies. And so when we show up to buy a property and then the asking price is 10 million, we don't offer 10 million. We offer typically between 15 to 30% below the fair market value. So that gives us a bit of the buffer in a market downside or potential market down cycle. And we also do the CapEx, which is between a 30 to a 250% return on investment on just the CapEx portion. So
what about RSP eligibility?
We definitely are. It's a mutual fund trust, so the structure is eligible for any registered plans, TFSAs, our LIFs, RSPs. Yes. Minimum investment is $5,000, so it's not one of those super exclusive hedge funds that are minimum buy is $1 million or $2 million. It's really for individuals that at any income level that appreciate income. So if I'm making an investment of $10,000, or I'm making an investment of $10 million, based on that investment size, you're just getting your monthly income, because we pay monthly. We price our net asset, our NAV is priced monthly, so you're not waiting for a lot of private companies. They price it once a year or twice a year. We price it monthly, and definitely the price movements won't swing month to month, but once or twice a year we will have NAV increases, because to value 400 buildings or 10,000 units, we can't do that in a month or two. We got to take a quarter of that portfolio and then evaluate that 4 times a year.
Okay, so I'm in. Okay, I'm going to say public here that I'm in. I'm sold personally. It's not going to be $10 million that I'm going in with, but I am in. And if anybody wants to invest or would like to learn more, call me. As I mentioned before, I'm a licensed dealing rep. I'm going to put everybody's contact info up again here. Everybody who's here tonight, and I think that's great, Ken. I like what you guys are doing. I've heard really good things about you guys, so I am in. Howard Lando, are you with us, by the way, or Navtash?
I'm here.
Okay,
Howard
good.
Lando.
Howard's in the car. Ken, before we move on, is there anything you wanted to leave us with? I kind of interrupted rather abruptly.
No. That's not.
Okay.
I think what I'll do is I'll send you our most, because we have our most up-to-date financials and marketing package. I'll send that to you, and then feel free to distribute that to your contacts.
All right. And then if people call me, I'll explain the process. I'll explain the way it works. We need to identify what kind of an investor are you, if you're qualified to invest, whether you're accredited or eligible, and there's certain rules and suitability and concentration rules and all this stuff. It's I will walk you through that if people would like to know more, be sure to give me a call. Thanks again, Ken. Great presentation. We appreciate it. Howard
Thank you,
Landau.
David.
Thank you. Howard, did your son get the vaccine? Is that where you were tonight?
I was trying, and we're going to have to try again. It was a pop-up clinic that would have taken us, probably wouldn't have got it tonight. But thanks for asking. We're on it, though. We're not going to give up. It's obviously timing is everything, so we'll get it. But thanks for bearing with me. So we actually went there, and I'm just sharing because everyone's in the same boat.
Well, it's
But,
good.
thank you.
It's good to know, and we're happy to have you with us, Howard Lando. Is it licensed insolvency practitioner, a LIP? Is that the correct title, or is it lit?
No, and it's actually lit, and we actually have to be careful that we wouldn't, I would tell you that the right term is lit.
Okay.
So I would love that if you corrected that. And I'm not being nitpicking. I just happen to be wearing my glasses. My last name is Landau, just so that, coming from a guy in a car, I hope you understand.
Okay. Yeah.
Just in case somebody
Thank you.
writes it down.
Sorry about that. Yeah. Thanks for letting me know. Okay.
No, it's like
I'm
Martin
working.
Landau,
I'm
the
working
famous,
on that. So.
famous actor.
Okay, so talk to us if you would, Howard. What is happening out there in the world of a trustee? You mentioned to me there's some new things happening with tax collection, and the courts
Yeah.
are starting to move on judgments now.
Yeah. So, I mean, people should know that the world is changing back to what it was a little bit before COVID in the area of collections, simply because just like every business, there's a point in time where even people who lend money for a living can't survive without collecting their money, no matter how much government help there is out there, whether it be landlords, whether it be the tax department themselves. So what we're seeing is that the tax department, for example, is now sending out letters to everyone who was paid probably too much for the CERB last year. They're reconnecting with debtors who they were speaking with prior to COVID. So by the way, is my screen lost, or that's just you doing?
No,
that?
we can see.
I'm
We can
still there.
see you. Yeah, I just put up the slide again.
Just making sure. So anyway, long and short of it is like every business, and we do get busier when people are trying to collect their money, because it gives people who are in debt the sense of urgency that they need help. So for a long time, I'm going to say up till even February of this year, there just really was a moratorium on urgent collection matters. There was people who were clearly in debt and would definitely be calling me for help as things as the pandemic was to come to an end, or to get in front of the end of the pandemic. But it was very different than prior to the pandemic, and certainly now it's starting to look more like pre-pandemic. By no means is it anything like pre-pandemic, but it's much more like pre-pandemic in terms of people's questions and the inquiries and the sense of urgency. That little bit, knowing that things are going back to normal, means that, it's kind of like you have the whole weekend to do your homework. I kind of use that analogy. I remember being in high school and I said, I've got the whole weekend to do my homework. Well, Sunday night's here. I better do my homework. We're kind of getting to Sunday night now with the debt issue, because Monday morning is September, when we're hearing that the deferrals, the subsidies, and the sort of the moratorium on, a lot of enforcement of judgments will end, because the courts will be back in full action. So those who are really trying to grapple with what to do about their debt are feeling a greater sense of urgency. Now, again, we're not there yet, but it's very much parallels just about everything. I mean, everyone's got something in their life right now that they know is going to restart, and in this case, or a problem they're going to have to deal with because the world is coming back. This is one of them. Because that's sort of what I was talking about, and it does come to life.
So, Howard, what are some of the ways that you can help people if somebody has fallen behind and they're running out of the government money is going to stop eventually, and the creditors start to call? What are some of some of their options?
Well, again, it's like every time you have trouble or problem you're not really equipped to deal with, call a professional. In this case, that would be me. It wouldn't mean you're coming in to file bankruptcy by any stretch. you'd say, look, I don't know if I'm bad off. I need someone to tell me how bad off I am. So I'll kind of talk you off the ledge, so to speak, if it isn't so bad. And if it's bad, I'll get you to realize it's not as bad as you think. So if you take an example of somebody who has really got themselves into extreme credit card debt during the pandemic, and the job that they had before wasn't going to come back at the same level, then they should call and tell me that. And I'll say to them, look, maybe you don't need me. Maybe you need to go back and do a budget, see if the things are going to get better. And if then we can find a point in the future where if it doesn't get better, you have a strategy to come back to me and say, Howard, I'm going to need to protect myself and my creditors. It's really going to be much worse than I thought. Or let me spend a couple of months. Let me see how things go. And that's a very typical consultation I've had with people during the pandemic, just because less things were known about the future. Now more things are known. So they should just basically call me for a free consultation, and we'll see if they're going to need me down the road.
Howard, sometimes people run into trouble if they've racked up the credit cards, and they start to panic, and they say, "Oh no, I'm gonna lose my house." Can you help these people? And what is a consumer proposal as opposed to a bankruptcy? Is that something that you deal with as well? And what is that exactly?
Well, I really enjoy talking to people who know real estate, because I can give them a very concrete example of where somebody who's in too much debt can still keep their real estate interest going and fix their debt and allow them to keep their real estate. So the answer to your question is, a consumer proposal is taking your unsecured debt and compromising it to a point where you can afford one payment. You will whack the crap out of your credit rating because you're reducing the debt. But if you're concerned about keeping up payments with your primary asset, like such as a mortgage, and your equity isn't terribly high, although that's harder to find these days, you can take, let's say you have a house that's worth $1.2 million, and you're carrying a $900,000 mortgage or an $800,000 mortgage, and you find yourself in trouble for over $100,000. Well, your equity, your share, let's say you own it with your spouse, your equity share on paper, at least your net worth on paper, may not be much more than 100,000. If you owe, let's say, over 100,000, then you're going to need to talk to me, because that may be why you can't help pay the mortgage. And so we'll sit you down. We'll use a consumer proposal to reduce your unsecured debt, and they'll give you an opportunity to catch up or keep good with your mortgage payments, and obviously get this burden off off of you that you've taken on. Probably end up in debt because you have a house, because you have had a job. So a lot of people end up not realizing how deep they are, and still we can keep you in your property by doing it that way. I can certainly do that in person, but that's the general. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it definitely does. And there's opportunities too for people who if they have run up debt, but if they own property, that property has probably in the last few months gone up in value quite a bit. So they could look to refinance and take out equity to deal with some of that debt too, as long as they can service the debt. That's the only thing. Otherwise, it's going to become a bad cycle. So we've got the correct spelling of your name, Landau. I apologize for that. License and the proper title too. I was 0 for 2 tonight.
Yeah,
License and solvency trustee, and your number's on the screen. And you've done an awesome job helping some clients who've come to me in the past who've needed assistance.
Yeah, and I can play one song very well. You know that, right?
That's right.
I can play also. It's not a.
You're going to
play one song.
Our next rock concert.
One song, but I only have one song.
Okay, well, that's all you need is one song. You don't need a lot of songs. And I think
I did want to throw in another thing. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go.
Yeah, it was more about today's. I like my thing when I get on these situations. I like to share something from my day. So on the category of refinancing, if somebody out there is trying to do a refinancing, and they're running into things like writs and liens and all these things that they don't have seen before, and their deal is starting to sink because they didn't know about all these things. That's another thing I wanted to throw in. I do speak the language of writs and liens and debt at the same time.
All right.
Back to music. I'm happy to play that one.
Howard Lando, licensed insolvency trustee. Thanks for being on the show. This Sunday we have a fundraiser with a musical fundraiser celebrating the life of Robert Brand. Jerry, you have a song. Jerry, you're going to play your guitar this Sunday at the big event at the celebration of Robert Brand has ALS, and he wrote a whole bunch of poems because he couldn't play his guitar and sing anymore. He wrote all these poems, and a bunch of musicians have come forward on this Facebook group, celebration of the life of Robert Brand. And Jerry wrote a song. Jerry wrote a song. I wrote a song. So if you want to come out to that, that's watch out for my emails, or check out celebration of life of Robert Brand this Sunday, 2 p.m. or just message me or email me and I'll give you the details. It should be a fun afternoon. He's unfortunately not doing too well with the ALS, but means so much to him to have his friends, community, family get together and play music to some of his poems. So it's a nice thing to do to honor the man. Next up, so thanks again, Howard, for being with. Next up, we have Navtaj Chandoki, good friend, flipping for profit. Navtaj, welcome. Are you there?
I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Navtaj is actually a brother from another mother, and he runs regular training events. He's an awesome coach. Teaches people how to flip houses. Parade Canada is one of the websites. That's a professional real estate investors group, Canada, and flippingforprofit.ca. Jerry and I have had the good fortune to be invited as regular speakers at some of your awesome events. Tell us, Navtaj, a bit about the group, and also what's happening out there from a point of view of flipping. Is now a good time to be flipping, or is it a bad time to be flipping?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. Good evening, everybody. I'm glad to meet you all. To begin with, real estate has been hard for the last 40 years in Canada, and we are running out of land. We don't have enough land in Toronto, Vancouver. So having said that, recent report says from Bank of Nova Scotia that we need 3 million more brand new houses. So demand versus supply. Now, having said that, flipping has been there from day one. People buy a piece of property, flip it after 10 years, 20 years. For us, we are a new generation. We like to flip it within a day or within an hour or a signing deal. So there are some people, just like Howard said earlier, right now, the bankruptcies are up by 28% in Toronto and maybe almost like 30% in Vancouver. A lot of people have stretched themselves way too far. Some of them are facing, unfortunately, the circumstances of this COVID-19, and they have to downsize. So they are losing homes, whether it's a liens, whether it's a CRA liens, or whether it's a bankruptcy, foreclosures, or some other issues, whether it's a mental health or distress. And there are properties available, and you'll be surprised to know that people will call me. Today is Wednesday night at 9 p.m. and they say, can you buy my house tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.? And I said, okay, so what's the situation? Oh, 9:30, the sheriff is coming to kick me out. And I'm gonna become homeless. Or people would say certain things, which will really hurt you. Then I say, okay, you know what? I'm going to do everything possible. Or I'll get a call at 10 o'clock in the morning. Sir, your name is this, and we heard about you. We are out of the house. We have been thrown out of the house. We don't have money for the food or a hotel, or we have nowhere to go. We have lost the house to a bank. The bank have repossessed us. What can you do for me? At that time, we come in, we help those fellow Canadians, help them to make sure they downsize, and figure it out. They don't lose their credibility, make sure they get some part of the equity. And it's kind of endless scenario that every day somebody is in deeper trouble and they're in a denial. A real estate investor group came into existence in 2005, courtesy of yourself, David. You helped me to establish that group in April 2005. And I was at that time, I believe you were running a meetup group.
Yeah, I was running a meetup group and I couldn't carry it, and I saw some of the groups that you were running, and I said, Navtaj, this is for you. He said,
Yes.
I don't want it. I sent it over to him and he accepted it, and
Yeah. So ever since we have in April 2005, we conduct monthly meetings teaching fellow Canadians how to buy these totally beautiful properties at a beautiful bargain. For example, recently we have one of the biggest builder in Canada approached us. They listen, I can't reduce the price, but how about if I give you 30, 40,000 or discount? How does it not work? And they offered us a deal. If you buy our condo, they will pay first 2 years of the mortgage payments. It became an excellent tool for a lot of investors. Hey, that's good news. They don't have to make any mortgage payment for 2 years, and they're able to buy a decent condo, one of the most well-known builder in Canada. So these type of bargains come to us, and it may not be available to typical realtors, an average person. And I have a passion for teaching. I've been teaching for 28, 29 years now. I've written several different books. And one of the things I like to capitalize is there are so many grants available for average Canadian. And these grants are totally forgivable, whether you're buying a first-time house, whether it's your investment property, whether your basement is leaking, there is money available for you. If you want to turn your basement in-law suite, there is money available for you. You don't have to pay it back. And having said that, education becomes kind of I don't know, it's become like a passion. And you find that, hey, you help somebody and they got 50,000 for free. And it's not for free. Of course, there's a certain obligation to it. And again, this education part, what you offer here tonight, I think is tremendous. It adds a lot of values. Every speaker you have in tonight brings so much value, which may not be available in typical schools or may not be available at that many platforms.
well, thanks, Navtaj. I appreciate that, and I always enjoy attending your meetings too, whenever I can. Can you tell me, like, if somebody wants to get into flipping houses, what's required? Do they have to have a lot of capital? Can they get by with a little bit of capital? And what's involved?
Well, having said that, it may gonna sound like a little too much, but you can get involved flipping houses at zero money, no capital, no credit at all altogether. More or less, you are putting a piece of property under contract and assigning to another investor, provided that you got the property at a deep discounted price. Like recently, we have a deal in Oshawa, and the gentleman is having enough of it with his tenants. The property is pretty old, and it will still not go on MLS. It has some issues with a bit of foundation. In my opinion, the property may be worth around 630 to 650, and we got that property for 290. And for
Wow.
me, I didn't have to put a dime or nickel, and I had somebody else who was willing to give me $100,000 more just to take out my contract.
Wow.
Another deal we just did not too long ago, that was a building code violation. A gentleman living in the house, going through some rough time, have some issues. The house was in a desperate need. There was a deck falling apart, even the roof was leaking, and I'm sure the neighbors are complaining. The guy called me and he said, listen, you know what? I'm in trouble. The city is going to be pushing me. Can you help me? Sure. We bought the piece of property, paid him $200,000, spent about $35,000, and sold the property for $515,000. It's just a matter of like $250,000 profit in less than 13 weeks time.
Navtav, I know you offer some courses like in a weekend coaching program. I've seen, photos. You're taking people on tours, buses, um, to the courthouse. Is it to see what's happening there? Can you tell us about some of those weekends? What goes on?
Well, some of the training is done during the weekdays. We take students or so-called investors to a court office, whether they are seeing a foreclosure process, power of sale, whether they are seeing a tax lien auction, or whether they are seeing something which is a sheriff is auctioning some properties off. Then also teach a bunch of builders. They come from all across Canada to learn. Even though have been in business for the last 30, 40, 50 years, or they have been in generations, and there are certain tricks and tips they want to see in real life. And one of the best way, in my opinion, is to learn is by watching a real deal in real time. You will not forget that. It's a real person involved losing their home. And just for example, we were witnessing a sheriff's sale, and it was horrible what was happening with this two business partners. And one had a judgment, other didn't have it, and the property need to be sold immediately. And the gentleman almost had a heart attack right in the court.
My God.
And it's funny to see that, how sweet it can be. On the other hand, we were able to speak to him, assured him, we were able to reach to a very good agreement where everybody walked as a winner and we made the most money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, it's very important. You mentioned earlier, people are in denial because I always wonder, as a mortgage broker, I know that, if people don't pay their mortgage, they have time, to remedy the situation, and they can always sell the property. I mean, you'd think that you if you can't pay your mortgage and you can't refinance, or it doesn't make sense for you to refinance, that rather than waiting for the lenders to take action and run up legal fees, which is all going to be coming out of your pocket at the end of the day, that you think that they would be proactive. And I guess that's not the case.
Well, recently there was an article in Globe and Mail, and according to that, 90% Canadians do not know much about the mortgage. And if I ask somebody, hey, how many days do you have to be behind before the bank can start a power sale or foreclosure? You'll be shocked that 98% people do not know what is the real answer. How many days you have to be behind before a bank can start a power sale or foreclosure process in Canada? And fun part of this one of the worst part is in your department, when people sign up for 5-year mortgage, fixed mortgage rate, and they don't realize there's something called penalty called IRD, interest rate differential. And that's a killer. 85% of the Canadians become a victim, and they think, oh, I got a mortgage. Oh, great. I can pay it off anytime with 3-month penalty, but that's not the case. I'm sure you have gone through many, many scenarios. And one more thing I like to share with people here tonight is there something which is very beautiful available for Canadians who are losing their home. The word is called redemption, to reclaim. And that remedy is available for every single Canadian. We have been able to help a lot of fellow Canadians who have lost their property to the bank, and they have been kicked out, and the property has been put on the market for sale. The property has been sold. But before closing, we were able to pull it back, got them enough savings, gave them another head start, and gave them a second chance. And at the end of the day, that makes you feel good that you saved another family, they didn't become homeless, and they got a second chance. And forgive my language, all those hyenas and vultures who are grabbing all their equity will not be able to get their hands on somebody's hard work. And it's very painful that somebody's working so hard and built some equity, and 30-40% of the equity is all taken up by all the expenses, which can be extremely disheartening. And sometimes you wonder, is it legal? Is it moral? Is it ethical?
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's very, very painful.
To your point earlier about the IRD, the interest rate differential, you're absolutely right. It's remarkable. That's one thing people really should consider when they are deciding what mortgage to get. is it's, they look at the fixed and they look at the variable and say, okay, I'm paying a bit of a premium to have a fixed rate. Um, but if you wanted to pay that mortgage off entirely before the mortgage matures, the penalties can be in the tens of thousands of dollars sometimes. And people take it for granted if they're then going to sell their house, for example, and they assume that the penalty is not going to be crazy, and they can really get caught. So that's something for sure. Chuck Chakravati, I'm trying to see what his comment is. Not only that, David, banks interfere to decide that transfer rate, final buyer sunk costs for delinquent properties, bank sales of mortgage units. I'm not exactly sure what he means there. Um, if you want, you can unmute yourself, unless Navtaz, you know what he means?
Yeah, Navtej, what happens is the banks don't normally encourage the buyer to buy a distressed property very cheaply, especially when there is mortgage, and therefore they are also smart. They know. So it's very unlikely. I mean, I personally feel the examples, Mr. Navtej, which have given are extreme situations where, like the seller gave it at about half the price, and you realize about 250 in about, say, about 3 or 4 months time. I don't know whether, I mean, you would agree to that. Number two is the point which, David, you just last mentioned about the IRDD, interest rate differential. You always have a option to port the loan in your case. They, when they calculate, when you want to prepay the loan, the intention is what? You're going to buy another property, so the bank will tell you that, okay, you want to save the penalties, okay, we'll port this loan to another property and you maintain the equity based on that. I don't know.
No,
I mean,
you're right. You're
yeah,
right,
yeah,
Chuck. If
yeah, yeah,
if the people are moving, and that's what I always tell people, if
yeah,
you're moving to another property,
yeah,
maybe you're upsizing, your
yeah,
family's growing. Yes, you can port the contract normally for a
yeah,
fixed rate mortgage, but
yeah,
some
yeah.
people want to get out of the like they plan on leaving the country. Let's say they
Uh-huh.
plan on leaving the country, selling, leaving the country, or
Yeah,
their circumstances change and they need
yeah,
to sell. Maybe the job loss,
yeah,
sickness, whatever. The
yeah,
circumstances change, and they need to sell the property and get out of,
yeah,
and they're not gonna be buying another property. In those
yeah,
cases, you can get hit pretty hard
yeah.
on the interest rate differential.
I got it. I got it.
Yeah, yeah.
And 1 minute.
Jerry, are you with us still? We haven't heard from you in a while. Maybe Jerry's gone to work
And
on his song.
Navtej would like to answer the first question.
Yes, I can.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Navtej, yeah, Hanji.
Yeah. Question is very simple.
Yeah,
What you think is not what it is.
yeah,
85% of Canadians who have 5-year fixed mortgage end
yeah.
up paying IRD.
Uh-huh.
That's why every quarter you see banks making couple $billion profits.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to understand all these figures are coming from Canadian Bankers Association.
Mm-hmm.
These are coming from Stat Canada. Number two thing, when you're talking about distress situation,
Uh-huh.
let me give you a bit of a scenario. Let me take
Yeah,
you to a little tour of Canada.
yeah.
June 1983, Alberta. Oil prices dropped from $40 to $10 per barrel. We lost 128,000 jobs. You are able to buy the whole street for $2, street after street. Now, this is still happening right now in Alberta. Since 2015 till now, for 6 years, the property value have dropped by 40%. Now, in Canada, Alberta is the only province
Yeah.
where they will not come after you. This is called non-recourse mortgages.
Uh-huh.
Now, as long as we are concerned, not every mortgage is done with the bank. Banks are not the most friendliest people to deal with. Banks is not going to give you advice, neither your lawyer. A good broker like David Grossman will walk you through and say, listen, don't go for 5-year fixed mortgage because unless you are pretty steady. And this is what it is. Now, as long as power of sale or foreclosure is concerned, less than 0.001% will ever hit MLS. Unless otherwise you have been in the business for long enough, you need to receive those calls and then you say, okay, what happened here? There's so much equity there. Now, do you know that what does it cost to get a letter, a demand letter from a lawyer to when you default even one payment? You'll be shocked. You have no idea what the lawyers charge you. You may not have any idea how much they charge you for property management when the property is taken over by the bank. It's just like daylight robbery. Okay. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you have mortgage with the bank?
I have what? Mortgage with a bank?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know an average bank have 29 hidden charges on every mortgage document, and you are able to negotiate them?
No, I mean,
Thank you.
we have to like.
Let me ask you
No,
another
that,
question,
yeah.
point blank. Please forgive me. Majority of people who have mortgage, they're all bank. They are paying extra $10 a month. Why? Administration, hey, you got a mortgage, you're the client. These are all artificial. They just want to make more money on you. And everything is negotiable. And there is one more thing. Let me assure you something,
Yeah.
which you may or may not be aware of it.
Yeah.
I call it suicidal clause. Okay, 1989, 1981, 1974. I can go you all the recessions. When the market takes a dip, the banks have a different approach. They are going to look at you and say, okay, how many of you have 5 or 6 properties? And they're going to say, okay, 6 properties. They're going to look at you and they're going to say, listen, the bank have the right to recall any mortgage at any given time without further notice, even you're not defaulting. Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Are you aware of that or no?
Yeah. Yes, yes. They're a part of the agreement. Yes.
Yes. But most
Yes,
of the
they
people do
can.
not know that. Nobody ever pinpoint to them.
Well, I
And
guess
that's what,
when mortgages exceed the value of the property, the bank may choose to do that under certain
and
circumstances. But
Yes.
anyway, we got to kind of wind up here.
sure.
Navtaj, a lot of very interesting points, and that's why we always
Yeah,
enjoy your training program. So I'd encourage people to check out flippingforprofit.ca. Again, I'll share one last time the contact information for all of the presenters tonight. Jerry sent me a note, by the way, that he apologizes, but his internet was acting up. So, but at least we had him for part of the event, and I want to thank everybody for participating. Ian, Clovis, Ken, Howard, Navtaj, Chuck, and everybody who came out. We really appreciate you tuning in, as you always do, for our different events and webinars. As I mentioned, this Sunday coming up is a music event. If you're at home, you want to check it out, send me a note. I'll send you the details. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Great to have you with us, and we will see you next time. Have a good night, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
Bye.
No. Nice.
Nice meeting you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
God bless.
Thanks, David, Jerry, Ian.
Thank you.